Was it just me or was anybody else absolutely terrified of the Clinique women? You know, when you go into like Boots or wherever, that's like a drugstore here in the UK, there'd always be these like really highly polished, always stunning women, just looking so well put together that I was so intimidated by them. Those lab coats were intimidating. And they were the women who worked on the Clinique counter. They were like, I guess like the air stewardesses of the ground. Always so well put together and slightly intimidating. And Clinique is a brand that has been around for generations, and became and is an icon of the beauty industry, the beauty world for many. But over the past like decades or so, the brand has had its fair share of highs and lows, from practically inventing dermatologist-backed skincare and popularizing the idea of a multi-step skincare routine, to facing endless controversies and struggling to keep up with the ever-changing beauty industry. Like, where are they? A few people use Clinique, but they should be up there with like Paula's Choice when it comes to popularity, in my opinion. Not because I like their products, but they're that iconic, right? When Clinique launched in the late 1960s, it was revolutionary, like it really was. But staying relevant in the era of TikTok skincare is proving to be a hard task for many of these like heritage brands. TikTok is all about those indie, up-and-coming, Gen Z focused brands. With declining sales and constantly increasing competition, can Clinique really hold on to its place in the beauty world, or has the skincare industry already moved on? Chapter 1. Great skin can be created. The inspiration behind Clinique is a little unusual actually compared to most skincare brands. In fact, it might be the only brand in the world that started the way it did. It all began in 1967 when beauty editor Carol Phillips wrote an article for Vogue magazine titled "Can Great Skin Be Created?" The article consisted of Phillips asking skincare questions to pioneering dermatologist Norman Orentreach. This guy here. One of the key takeaways from this article was Norman's belief in the importance of having a skincare routine, a concept which was honestly revolutionary at the time when the skincare world was dominated by like a one-size-fits-all cream that was supposed to do everything regardless of your skin type or skincare concerns. We're talking cold creams, toners that look more like potions. Like, skincare wasn't doing much back then. Norman was developing a pretty trailblazing 3-step skincare routine, which was unheard of back then. Cleanse, exfoliate, and moisturize. You were supposed to perform this twice a day, morning and night, using products specifically chosen for your skin type. Again, seems so obvious nowadays. It's what we do, it's what a skincare routine is, right? But back in 1967, revolutionary, like it hadn't been heard of. The article appeared in the August 1967 edition of Vogue, and in a lucky turn of events, it was read by Evelyn Lauder, the daughter-in-law of beauty titan Estée Lauder. Evelyn brought the article to her mother-in-law's attention as she knew the company had been looking for a new game-changing idea. Estée Lauder was already one of the most prestigious and successful brands at the time, but they didn't necessarily have it easy. During their rise to success, they had to battle against Revlon, the biggest cosmetic brand in the US at the time, constantly copying Estée Lauder's products and marketing strategies in an attempt to stunt Estée Lauder's growth. I guess they were like the M&Co of the time. Estée Lauder also had a steadily aging customer base. They were mostly popular, with older women, and previous attempts to attract a younger audience had failed pretty miserably. So they were desperately searching for a new idea that was so different from what their competitors already did. Something that they could like get this new market before anybody else could catch up. They decided that what Carol Phillips and Norman Orentreach were talking about in this Vogue article was exactly what they were looking for. So they hired both of them to help them create a new brand. Nobody else at the time focused on creating skincare that delivered what skin really needed. They were more worried about selling customers what they thought they needed and what they thought they wanted. Basically just anti-aging shit everywhere. Clinique was going to be the first, and they were going to be different. Together, Evelyn Lauder, Carol Phillips, and Norman Orentreach set about creating what would become Clinique. A brand built around science-backed skincare tailored to the needs of the individual. A game-changing idea that helped shape how we see skincare to this day. Though they didn't realize that it would also almost bankrupt the Estée Lauder company in just 6 months. Chapter 2. Brand Launch. Estée Lauder had moved incredibly quickly to develop Clinique before their competitors had a chance to get ahead of them. And in 1968, almost exactly a year after the Vogue article was released, Clinique was launched at Saks Fifth Avenue in New York. A year is very quick to launch a whole new brand. The brand name came from Evelyn Lauder, who came up with a name after visiting Paris. And while she was there, she kept noticing signs saying Clinique Esthétiques. Speak French now, which literally is just French for aesthetics clinic. But she loved the sound of the word clinique, and it was decided it was the perfect balance of clinical and glamorous, which they were going with for the whole branding. It's a good name, it's clever. And they didn't just launch with a handful of products like most brands do these days. Clinique launched with an unbelievable 117 products. Like, that's crazy now, but back then this was even more shocking, as most brands just started with one product, tested the response from the consumers, and then went from there. 117 products. Craziness. But Clinique was different. It was built on Norman's advice as a dermatologist, and a key part of this was that 3-step skincare system, which they would become famous for. The brand wanted to create products for every single skin type that still stayed true to their core 3-step skincare system. That meant that every single product was formulated for a specific skin type, and in a way that it worked with other products to create the perfect 3-step routine for every customer. So you can see why there were so many variations, right? There are so many possible variations. Their skincare lineup consisted of 3 main categories though, which aligned with their 3-step system. Step 1, cleanse using their facial soap, which was a mild cleanser that comes in both liquid and bar form. Step 2 is exfoliate using their clarifying lotion, very heavy alcohol-based exfoliating toner. This is one of the first mainstream products to re-emphasize daily exfoliation, although as we know to this day, that's probably not the best thing to do. And then of course, moisturize using their dramatically different moisturizing lotion. That's the name of it, that's not what I think. A lightweight, yellowy moisturizer designed to restore hydration. And unlike many other brands at the time, Clinique didn't just focus on skincare or makeup. Clinique actually launched with products in both categories, though their makeup again was designed with that science-backed skincare first philosophy. The products were also allergy tested and fragrance free. Doesn't sound exactly groundbreaking nowadays, it's kind of standard, but back then, hugely groundbreaking, massively groundbreaking, which made them hugely popular with consumers with sensitive skin. With some of the more popular products from the makeup line, including liquid and powder foundations. I remember these, not from the 60s or 70s, but I think my mum used Clinique foundation. One of the first fragrance-free foundations on the market. Lipsticks, dermatologists tested and formulated for sensitive lips. Eye makeup, they advertised hypoallergenic mascaras and eyeshadows, again designed for people with sensitive skin and people who wore contact lenses. This more scientific approach to skincare was a completely new angle in the world of cosmetics, and you could argue that dermatologist-driven brands today like CeraVe, SkinCeuticals have Clinique to thank for paving the way for this approach. And the brand's launch was received relatively enthusiastically, you could say, and initial sales were fairly good. But the decision to launch 117 products all at once was a risky one, and it was a gamble that almost didn't pay off. Chapter 3, Early Problems. In the first few months, sales were okay, they were fine, but the brand wasn't appealing to as wide a customer base as Estée Lauder had hoped. The problem was that they were trying to market Clinique in the same way and in the same places that had historically done well for Estée Lauder. But the type of consumers who loved Estée Lauder's more glamorous and luxurious branding just didn't connect in the same way with Clinique. The whole dermatologist, scientist side of the brand just didn't care for it. And those who may have liked the scientific nature of the brand weren't shopping in those kind of places. Estée Lauder had hoped that Clinique would appeal to a much wider range of customers, but that just wasn't happening right at the start. Leonard Lauder, Estée Lauder's son and an executive at the brand, even said that we were pumping money into Clinique across the board, not realizing that in certain markets, we might as well be pouring it into the sea. And very quickly, money became a major issue for the brand. This was the first time that Estée Lauder had launched on such a massive scale all at once, and it led to some pretty major teething problems. They had vastly overestimated the demand for Clinique to start with, and on top of that, Launching an entire line at once required a huge amount of money invested up front. So only 6 months after the launch of Clinique, Estée Lauder found themselves in a dangerous position. Short on both cash and inventory for both of their brands, they apparently had just 900,000 left in reserve at this point. I know that probably sounds like a lot of money, but considering they are a business and had previously held around 10 million in cash before launching Clinique, it was pretty catastrophic for them. And they were still pumping money into this unprofitable brand, so that 900,000 wasn't going to last much longer. They were fucked, for lack of better words. Things got even worse when in April of 1969, Revlon did their copycat act again and launched Etheria, a hypoallergenic line meant to challenge Clinique's scientific aesthetic. It was at this point that Estée Lauder, the company, realized that they needed to take drastic actions or face potentially devastating consequences for both Clinique and the Estée Lauder brand. They did not have the finances to continue pushing Clinique in an attempt to control the market before Revlon and Etheria took over, so they decided they had to cut 10% of the staff across the business in order to reduce their overheads and free up funds for Clinique. So they fired all these people. They then used these funds to open up a new factory which would manufacture products exclusively for Clinique. This increased their production for both brands, as previously their one factory had been making products for both Estée Lauder and Clinique brands, so they were working overtime, struggling to get these products out. But the biggest thing that changed their fortunes was they eventually noticed that in places where Clinique was popular, Estée Lauder wasn't. And in places where Clinique struggled, Estée Lauder was thriving. This led to the realization that they needed to change their approach. Instead of trying to force Clinique's success in the same markets that Estée Lauder had succeeded in, they moved to focusing their efforts on places where Clinique was already popular. And Estée Lauder explained this change of tactics in an interview. She said, "We already knew the markets where Estée Lauder succeeded, cities and countries where fashion was celebrated and women made a conscious effort to be stylish. These were places like Los Angeles and New York." They say, to our bewilderment, Clinique had a very hard time in those fashion-focused markets, but did extremely well in Chicago and Philadelphia. It took us a while to figure out what was going on, why some markets would warmly embrace the concept of Clinique and others would cause us trouble. When we did, it was a light bulb moment. Despite our insistence that Clinique wasn't an Estée Lauder brand, we'd still be thinking of it as an offshoot of Estée Lauder. Estée Lauder went on to say that now we realize there were two completely different groups of customers who embraced these two lines in completely different ways. The Estée Lauder brand had an aura of glamour. It embodied aspiration. Clinique was more democratic. It was less about aspiration and more about everyday pragmatism. Chapter 4: Building a Skincare Empire. So once Estée Lauder had realized what they were doing wrong with Clinique's marketing, once they had cracked this code, things finally started to improve. It took several years and millions of dollars, but eventually Clinique became profitable. That was just the start though. That was just the start. Profitable was great, but Estée Lauder was dreaming bigger. She wanted to grow Clinique into a dominating force in the cosmetics industry. Part of the way that she had hoped to achieve this dominance was through Clinique's unique approach in department stores. This was at a time where department stores were the only real place to find good skincare. Standing out as a new brand in this environment wasn't easy, but Clinique had a solution. Their branding and customer service in stores focused on science and technology. Every sales counter was fitted with these diagnostic lamps and computers and the white lab coats their salespeople wear, but they become iconic to the brand. Like when you see someone in a lab coat, you used to think Clinique, now you think Kiehl's or Clinique. The computers were very simple. All they did was ask the customer questions that a dermatologist might use to assess skin types, and then it would tell the customer which of the 4 skin types their skin was. As simple as this seems now, it did an excellent job of reinforcing the scientific feeling of the brand, right? And elevating the customer's experience. Nobody else was doing anything like this, and it looked very, very science. But perhaps the biggest key to Clinique's success was the 3-step skincare system. It quickly became Clinique's signature routine, and it made the entire concept of skincare routine, popular. It is arguably the very first skincare routine. For decades, it was seen as the skincare routine for skincare enthusiasts, and it's still used by millions of people to this day. And on top of all this was the fact that their products actually worked pretty well, especially when used on a regular basis in a routine like the brand had promoted. And because of this, they had multiple products become cult favorites. People were seeing results, so they trusted this brand now. Their dramatically different moisturizing lotion became an instant hero product of theirs. Loved for its lightweight, non-irritating formula, today it's still one of Clinique's best-selling products worldwide. The clarifying lotion, which is a toner, more of an astringent that introduced the concept of daily exfoliation to the mainstream. Their super balanced foundation was another favorite, one of Clinique's first major makeup hits, a lightweight, oil-free foundation that adapted to combination skin. The Black Honey lipstick, which I think has gone viral again, it's had its moment, or something like that. Introduced in 1971, the Black Honey lipstick was relaunched in 1989 as Almost Lipstick. It quickly became a cult favorite this time, with many consumers loving its universally flattering shade and versatile texture. It actually really significantly boosted the brand's visibility and sales during the 1990s, and the same thing happened again just a few years ago. All of this combined made Clinique a huge success. It even became the fastest growing cosmetics brand in the US in the 1970s, and the brand just went from strength to strength after that. They had another surge in popularity in the 1990s, and by the early 2000s, they were the best-selling cosmetics brand in the US department stores. From almost bankrupting its parent company in 6 months, Clinique had steadily grown over the decades into a global powerhouse in the cosmetics market. But that doesn't mean the road to success for them was smooth either. They got over the initial hurdles. Like pretty much every brand in this series, they had their fair share of controversies. Let's get into it. Chapter 5: Controversies and Lawsuits. So I've hinted at this a couple of times already, and as skincare enthusiasts, we probably already know what's coming. So let's talk about the controversy surrounding their clarifying lotion. The clarifying lotion is what we would call today an exfoliating toner, ridiculously popular in the 90s and early 2000s. Honestly, basically, I think everyone was using it, but was it good for your skin? As consumer knowledge around skincare products and ingredients has grown in recent years, more and more people are calling out Clinique's clarifying lotion for basically being fancy alcohol. And people find this extremely drying. We are talking clean and clear level astringent kind of products, right? A lot of dermatologists these days warn against using products containing denatured alcohol, especially over long periods of time, or those with sensitive skin. And again, depending on the formulation, it can be drying and potentially irritating to skin, depending on the formulation. Denatured alcohol is good for so many things. A lot of ingredients can't dissolve in water alone, so denatured alcohol is added to the ingredient list to help those ingredients dissolve. It can help ingredients actually penetrate the skin. It adds a light, refreshing feeling to your products, and something ridiculous like 90% of the alcohol in a product is going to evaporate. These things are very good at removing excess sebum, again giving you that more refreshed feel, but this is an astringent. It can help make your pores look tighter too. And when you do have so much alcohol, along with things like salicylic acid, it's important to balance out your product with humectants, things that are going to replenish the skin. And whilst we do have glycerin, a few other humectants, we also have salicylic acid. So whilst you may be balancing out the potential irritation from the alcohol, you're still exfoliating twice a day. As a formulation, it looks like a disaster. It looks like an absolute disaster. And as I mentioned, being told to use this twice a day. You cannot do that. Clinique have also been called out in recent years for its claims of being fragrance-free and hypoallergenic, something that has been a core part of this brand since its inception. Many consumers nowadays are pointing out that hypoallergenic claims in skincare are basically useless. There aren't many regulations regarding this term. We know that this is a pretty outdated, weirdly done test that was first of all done on a rabbit ear and then somebody's back by applying percentages of these individual ingredients in huge amounts that you just wouldn't be using in cosmetics. It's kind of like swallowing a cup of salt and then being like, oh, you shouldn't have salt, it can kill you. You know, it doesn't make sense. So people find Clinique's science fairly outdated. They've also been called out for misleading consumers using clean beauty and fear-mongering to trick people into buying their products. This kind of practice seems to have become pretty commonplace for Clinique, as this alleged false advertising has led to multiple lawsuits for the brand recently. In 2020, Clinique faced a false advertising lawsuit which claimed that certain Clinique products labeled as oil-free actually contained oils. The lawsuit was part of a broader action involving multiple cosmetic companies accused of similar misleading oil-free claims. Less than a year later, in March of 2021, Clinique was subjected to a class action lawsuit alleging that Clinique's Redness Solutions product line was falsely advertised as containing probiotic technology. The lawsuit claimed that the products did not contain live probiotics, as the microbial ingredients were in a dead state, and the presence of preservatives would render any probiotic ineffective, basically. The lawsuit alleged that Clinique had used these misleading claims in order to trick consumers into paying a premium for these products. That's a very popular lawsuit, being tricked into paying a premium. And that's just the start of it when it comes to alleged misleading claims by Clinique. They were accused of making false anti-aging claims in 2013 about their repair wear youth surge and turnaround products, something pretty much every skincare brand has probably been guilty of. They also faced accusations back in 2019 that their vegan blended face powder actually contained at least one animal-based ingredient, specifically carmine, a food coloring which is made from crushed beetles. Another popular lawsuit in the makeup world. This leads us to another controversy. For a brand that allegedly lies about their products being vegan, it's probably no surprise that they were one of the many brands who half-heartedly claimed for years that they were cruelty-free against animal testing, apart from when they had to sell the products in China. Obviously, that doesn't count according to Clinique. Again, something we hear over and over again in these videos. And like all the other brands I cover in these videos, the lawsuits were endless. They just seem to be ongoing all the time. They've been accused of greenwashing, making fake claims about sustainability, but allegedly not really doing anything to be eco-friendly. More recently, they've been caught up in the benzene drama I talked about in my Behind the Beauty on CeraVe, where several brands were all included in this large class action lawsuit claiming that some of their products containing benzoyl peroxide ended up having unacceptably high levels of benzene, a known cause of cancer after the benzoyl peroxide degraded over time. But that wasn't true, you're fine. We can go on and on, but I'll stop for now because we'll be here all day. The usual lawsuits, false advertising, fake product claims, basically being a shitty company and lying, like all of them. I mean, we can go on and on about Estée Lauder, but I feel like they're their own video, because there's a lot behind Estée Lauder. Chapter 6, Why Clinique Lost Its Prestige. With all the controversies and criticisms aimed at Clinique, it's probably not surprising that they're seeing a decline in popularity at the moment, though there are other factors having a big impact on their decline. One of the biggest issues, arguably, that Clinique is having at the moment is that they've relied on their counters in department stores ever since they first launched. But department stores are dying. People aren't going out shopping anymore. Like, why bother when you can just get all these products online, you know? 3 of the biggest sellers of Clinique products for decades in the US have been Macy's, Nordstrom, and Bloomingdale's. But all those chains have seen steadily declining foot traffic for years now. Years and years now. And although they made the move into places like Ulta and Sephora, Clinique's prestige branding and price point just isn't capturing the imagination of younger consumers. Prestige. It doesn't help that Clinique has never really evolved beyond their basic dermatologist-backed branding. Their brands barely changed. They may have been innovative back in the 1960s, but they have competition now. Really good competition. They aren't the only brand built on science and backed by dermatologists. In fact, dermatologists approved, dermatologists recommended is a selling tactic everybody uses nowadays. Clinique has just kept re-releasing the same products while other brands have actively been innovating. Younger millennials and Gen Z in particular have no loyalty to previously popular department store brands whatsoever. Younger consumers aren't going to pay $30 for a basic cleanser from Clinique when they get something more effective from CeraVe or the other competitors for half the price, not even half the price, a quarter of the price. The same goes for Clinique's Moisture Surge Moisturizer, which has been a bestseller for them for years, but they have competition now and so many better products. There are plenty of brands offering more effective formulas at a lower price. And obviously, don't get me started on the clarifying lotion. No one wants that shit anymore. No one wants it anymore. This is a common trend for Clinique products that used to be standouts and cult favorites for the brand are now seen by younger consumers as dated, expensive, boring, ineffective, and just wrong. And it all had a huge impact on the brand's sales figures. After the viral moment of their Black Honey lipstick back in 2021-2022, Clinique reached a brand value of $9 billion. But after their brief virality had passed, Clinique's brand value plummeted by a third to $6 billion the next year, and even further down to $4.8 billion in 2024. Like, that's nothing. That's still so much money. Now, it's still a high valuation for a cosmetics brand, right? And Clinique remains a big name in the industry. The problem is that their sales and brand value is on a sharp downward trend. And it's hard to see how they can turn things around. If Clinique wants to remain as one of the biggest brands in beauty, they need to make some major changes and do it soon. Very soon. Chapter 7. Can Clinique ever be cool again? Now, Clinique has tried to adapt to the forever changing beauty market. Like I mentioned earlier, they are now available in Ulta and Sephora. Here in the UK, they've always been available in Boots, I think, yeah, which is like an easy accessible store for most people. And they do sell well in these places, but it seems to be mostly existing fans of the brand who are just buying the products in Ulta or Sephora instead of department stores. They aren't gaining those new customers as they'd hoped. As I said, younger consumers find them outdated, boring. They have also attempted to expand their range by launching more serums and like retinol products, but it's hard to stand out in that area of skincare if you aren't doing anything special, which Clinique aren't. I mean, actives in skincare are obviously hugely popular right now, but the competition is also very high. The Ordinary, SkinCeuticals, La Roche-Posay, Paula's Choice, even Drunk Elephant. These are all big names when it comes to active-focused skincare brands, and most of them are cheaper than Clinique. Bar SkinCeuticals maybe, who aren't even known for their use of active ingredients. So you don't look at Clinique and think, oh, good actives. You think, paint stripper on my face. In 2020, they named Emilia Clarke as a brand ambassador for Clinique. Love her. Met her, she was lovely. I didn't know who she was. She was stunning. But this really didn't help draw in customers at all. It didn't really help do anything. It probably didn't help that Game of Thrones had already ended at this point, and the ending was widely regarded as awful. So people didn't want to see the cast on TV anymore. They were like, we need a minute. Maybe had they made her the brand ambassador at the peak of Game of Thrones' popularity, things could have been very different. They have had some success, however, in drawing in a younger audience on social media. As we mentioned, their Black Honey lipstick did go viral on TikTok, and Clinique did actually play a part in that. It wasn't entirely down to good luck. It started with a moment of virality in 2021 when a TikTok user called Shani Darko made a post where she applied Clinique's almost black lipstick in Black Honey, mentioning that it was the shade worn by Liv Tyler whilst filming Lord of the Rings. Her video alone ended up getting 2.2 million views, but as other users started noticing the popularity of the video, a lot of people started talking about it on TikTok, with Black Honey hashtag and Clinique Black Honey getting over 242 million views altogether. So they had a truly viral moment. Clinique helped fuel this by sending out products to content creators to increase interest in the shade and extend its virality. They also pushed the products more with retailers and created new Black Honey related products to capitalize on this trend. It was a huge success for the brand. Like, the shade was pretty much sold out everywhere. I remember seeing videos of people going to like Sephora and Ulta and it just being empty. Not the whole shop, you know, the area where the lipstick's meant to be. Clinique's own website by the end of that summer, it was sold out too, and at its peak, they were apparently selling one Black Honey lipstick every 3 seconds. They managed to extend the product's virality into 2022, and although sales had dropped off slightly, it's still one of the most popular products to this day. And in 2024, they were apparently still selling one every 7 seconds. But the brand just hasn't managed to repeat the success since then, like not with any of their other products. In fact, their attempts at leveraging social media and new technology in the last few years have been a little bit strange. In 2022, Clinique launched in the metaverse, as well as trying to jump on the NFT bandwagon. What happened to NFTs? I didn't even know what they were in the first place. Unsurprisingly, neither was much of a success. This isn't the kind of skincare innovation most people are looking for. Consumers want more effective products at affordable prices, not a virtual Clinique store. So if their efforts so far aren't working, working. How can Clinique actually turn this around? First things first, they need to update their branding to align with modern trends. Their minimalist aesthetic feels clinical, but not in the trendy way. You compare Clinique to brands like The Ordinary, even to CeraVe, whose packaging you know I fucking hate. It's dull, it's outdated. They could even do with a logo change. They have products that could potentially rival Paula's Choice if they change a few things up with the formulation. Consumers are far more educated than they were back in the 60s and 70s, 80s, even 90s, and simply being dermatologist created and approved isn't much of an appraisal anymore because most brands are. We have dermatologist influencers peddling brands here, there, and everywhere, so that's not how you stand out anymore. With that being said, they need to look at the brands that are really being touted by dermatologists. CeraVe, even Cetaphil, and kind of see what they're doing. Even Neutrogena's doing a better job. They're doing a very good job, actually. As I mentioned, they should reformulate too. Get that lotion, whatever it's called, in the bin. Reformulate, think Paula's Choice salicylic acid, update their usage instructions. Don't fucking exfoliate twice a day. Everybody knows this nowadays. Focus on skincare experts rather than celebrity faces, and focus on micro-influencers who are more relatable and actually use the products. Use their content as UGC content creation, and whilst the 3-step skincare routine system may have been iconic for decades, it feels outdated now. People want more flexible routines that are more specific to them and their needs, not just fitting into a 3-step structure. We have so many variations of skincare ingredients and product types now. They need to be targeting specific skincare concerns, not skin types. It's not enough to have 3 steps for oily skin, here we go. It's not enough to have 3 steps for dry skin, here we go. We need product categories that can mix and match. What's a routine for somebody who wants to focus on hyperpigmentation? What's a routine for somebody who is concerned about well aging? What's a 3-step, 4-step routine for people who are concerned about just generally brightening and evening their skin tone? You know, things like that. Stop pretending to be sustainable and cruelty-free and just do those things. Have a break from the lawsuits. Stop lying about what's in your product, you know? Consumers are educated now. They're not stupid. It's not the 90s where you can just throw a load of science words at a consumer and hope shit lands. If you're talking about clinicals, we want to know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, if you're saying it did this, it's like, well, prove it. They could also lean into the nostalgia factor with Y2K fashion becoming trendy again, especially amongst Jay-Z. Especially amongst Gen Z. They could relaunch some of their more successful products with like kind of that retro branding, create an affordable range for younger consumers, you know, kind of merge the two. Have a look at what brands like Bioma, Bubble, Glow Hub are all doing. There's just so many things they can do, so many different directions they could take. You could keep your core audience happy with your core products, right? Your core product line, but then maybe do an offshoot brand, something like that. Something needs to change in order to reverse their declining popularity. And it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of money to do it, but as we saw in the early days, they've already managed to turn the brand's failing fortunes around and avoid disaster once before. Can they do it, or do you really think Clinique's time as a leading beauty brand and icon is coming to an end?